Shikues të radio-televizionit të Kosovës, përshëndetje. Sekretari i Përgjithshëm i NATO-s Rutte po e viziton Kosovën për herë të parë që nga zgjedhja e tij në krye të aleancës. Me të do të realizojmë një intervistë ekskluzive dhe do të diskutojmë për situatën e sigurisë në vend, rajon, por edhe në nivel global. Mr. Rutte, thank you for finding time for us.
Thank you for having me on the show. Great.
This is your first visit since you were appointed as head of NATO. You first visited Bosnia yesterday and today in Kosovo. What was the purpose of this visit and how did the meetings with the leaders go?
Yes, well, I came into the Secretary Generalship of NATO on 1st of October, and I decided early on that I wanted to visit the region, the Western Balkans, because of course NATO is very much present here, and I thought it would be good to have discussions with the political leadership. Given the recent developments in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and particularly the court case against President Dodik of Republika Srpska, it was even more important to come here. The conversations went very well. What I really pressed with all the political leaders here is for them to understand that I will be even-handed. So when I have asks in their direction, I will do that also with the leaders in the other two countries. So if it is in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in Kosovo and Serbia, and I was on the phone last week with the President Vučić of Serbia, and he will probably visit in the near future, hopefully next week or the week after in Brussels. So I will be even-handed. The meetings went well. Obviously people are worried because you see tensions increasing, and at the same time people feel there is a huge opportunity given the fact that there is re-established and new leadership in Europe, in NATO, but also in the region. You feel a new sense of urgency of getting something solved, more durable. So worried, but also seeing the opportunity.
A lot of changes have been happening even after the election of Donald Trump as president of the US. US officials have indicated that there is a possible reduction in the military presence in Europe. If this plan moves forward, is there a possibility that the US troops will be withdrawn from KFOR?
Well, first of all, let's agree that since President Trump came on board in his second presidency, that he broke the deadlock on Ukraine. I think that was very important. So there has been meetings between the US team and the Russians, and as we speak, there is a meeting going on in Saudi Arabia between the US team and Ukraine. And I think let's be cautiously optimistic about this. I know that all major players on the Ukrainian side and the US side really want to bring Ukraine to a durable and lasting peace. So that is a positive influence. The fact that the US has indicated that they want European allies in NATO to spend more on defense and over time to have a fair sense of burden sharing where Europe would pay more for its own defense and the US pivoting more towards, for example, Asia, that's also only logical. But when it comes to the Western Balkans, I can say in all my discussions with the Americans, they are very much committed to the Western Balkans. They really want to make sure that this region remains stable and bring it to a place where we move away from the worries and getting more into making sure that the opportunities, the possibilities are really taken here and that we build on them.
It has been reported that President Donald Trump is considering major changes to the United States participation in NATO. Recently he stated, if you don't pay, I'm not going to defend them. And he was referring to other NATO member countries. What would such a stance mean for the alliance?
Well, you know, President Trump has been clear from his first term that he wanted European countries to spend more. In his first term, he was successful. Since 2017, European NATO allies spent 700 billion more, 700 billion, almost $1 trillion more on defense than in 2017. But it is not enough. We still have to spend more. But look what happened the last couple of weeks. Since he again became president of the US, we have seen last week 800 billion extra European package, EU. We have seen Germany announcing, I think it is now over $500 billion extra spending on defense. We have seen Denmark, Belgium, the Czech Republic, United Kingdom, so all announcing. So he is successful. Yeah, but it is successful. And not only because he is there, I think he has really been an impetus to this, but also because we all know here in Europe that when we want to defend ourselves going forward against the Russians, we have to spend more, because the Russians are spending so much more on defense each year and ramping up defense industrial production. And then of course you have some countries still not at 2%, and my message to them is, make sure you are at 2% before the NATO summit, because now it is me calling you, but hey, you might get calls from somebody from Washington who is of course having a lot of patience, but he might get a bit irritated.
Yes, and we've seen the famous meeting in the Oval Office between President Trump and Zelensky, and after that they suspended the aid for the Ukraine, military aid. Do you see soon a possible peace agreement regarding the war in Ukraine, and what would that mean for the stability in the region, in the global security, and especially in our countries?
Well, I think we really have to be thankful to President Trump that he broke the deadlock on Ukraine, because this war cannot continue forever. There are so many people losing their lives on the Russian side, on the Ukrainian side, it is incredible. So for him to break that deadlock and starting the discussions with the Russians and the Ukrainians is positive. I know that the Ukrainian presidency and the president really want to bring this war to a lasting peace. I know that the US does not want a repeat of what happened in 2014, 2015, when we had this Minsk agreement, which was basically then broken again by the Russians. So it has to be a lasting peace. Putin should not try it again. And we all know that when it comes to Ukraine, there is an audience of one listening in very careful. And that is the first secretary of the Communist Party of China, one Xi Jinping, being interested. Who will come out on top of this? Is that the Russian side or the European/US side? And that could have a big impact on the Indo-Pacific. So I really think Trump is in a good place on this, is really taking the initiative. I think that is important, and that will really help.
And coming back to Kosovo again, there is a growing concern in public discourse about the stability and the security in our country, and Kosovo has always relied on NATO's presence and support in Kosovo. Does NATO have a plan to reassure the citizens of Kosovo that NATO's presence in our country will remain unchanged?
Yes, that's why I'm sitting here. So NATO is committed to Kosovo. We will stay involved here through KFOR. We have increased KFOR presence in Kosovo recently. We have now quadrupled the KFOR presence in the north. We have tripled the amount of, let's say, physical presence of KFOR in the north. So I think this is all testimony to the fact that KFOR wants to remain an anchor of stability, not only in Kosovo, but also in the region. It's clearly there.
You mentioned the north, and that part of Kosovo has been fragile, especially since the Banjska attack. And Kosovo leaders have expressed their concerns about what they considered a permanent threat from Serbia. Has this issue been raised during your meetings with them, and what's your opinion on that?
Well, yeah, of course, the Kosovo leadership has raised some of these issues. That's clearly the case. And as I said, I try to be even-handed. So when I discuss with Aleksandar Vučić, the president of Serbia, or with the leadership in Bosnia and Herzegovina, then I try to give the same messages, that it all comes down, in the end, to political leadership really having to move forward and to bring this part of the world to good neighborly relations, so that you can start to really tap into the huge potential this region has. And again, I try to be as fair as possible, and not only me, also the European Union. We have a new guy in the EU working on the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue. We have, of course, Kaja Kallas, who is the new High Commissioner High Representative for Foreign Policy. We have Ursula von der Leyen, reinstated, strong leader in Europe as President of the European Commission. So I think we are in a place where we really can take the next steps.
What changes should there be done in the dialogue between Kosovo and Serbia?
Well, it would be good to start it again, to really have the dialogue, and that means, of course, that it is important for Serbia to really establish accountability on what happened in 2023. But it's also important for Kosovo to refrain from unilateral actions. So these confidence-building measures are really important to as a sort of start, create a base for ongoing discussions, again, through the good offices of Mr. Sørensen, who has been appointed to lead this Belgrade-Pristina dialogue.
You mentioned before President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and she recently presented a Rearm Europe plan. What is your opinion in this initiative?
Extremely positive, because again, this is also, I think, one, because Donald Trump is really, again, in his now Donald Trump 47, doing what he did as Donald Trump 45, pressing the Europeans and Canada to do more. And that is only fair, because the US is now picking up a bigger part of the bill for the collective defense than Europe is doing, and it has to be more in balance. So this burden sharing should be more should be fair. I think he's right there. But also because we know, as I said, that the Russians provide a bigger threat to the collective defense of Europe than only 10 or 20 years ago, given the amount of money they spent on defense, given the defense industrial production, which is being ramped up. And we see China massively investing in its military. For these two reasons, I was so happy with Ursula von der Leyen's announcements, particularly on this 800 billion package, which I think is really testimony to the EU taking this very seriously.
And my last question, what is your assessment on Kosovo's security force, and what do you see as Kosovo's path toward NATO? In your meeting with Osmani, she mentioned that it's about time Kosovo to be part of this organization.
Yes, and I know that ambition. Of course, there are some issues we still have to work through, particularly the four non-recognizers. Yeah, as you know, the Spain, Greece, Slovakia, Romania have not recognized Kosovo, so that's one issue we have to deal with. But whilst dealing with those issues, let's also establish as a fact that Kosovo and NATO are really working very strongly together, working very well together, that NATO is involved in developing the KSF in its humanitarian tasks within its current mandate. So I think that is very positive. So there is a lot of good stuff happening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.